Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. I'm very happy to see that we have quite a number of attendees this morning. We are going to talk about metadata management. And more precisely, we will share with you our way of implementing an efficient metadata management in a limited time frame in order for you to create value around your data. We have seen so many lengthy, complex, expensive metadata approaches that, well, we tend to think that we have a different way of looking at things. A few words about me. I'm in charge of international sales at Zinea, so covering the US market, the European market as well, and other continents. I've been involved in data for more than 10 years. So let's talk about metadata management now. The first question about why you should manage your metadata is you have a lot of data. Companies are producing more and more data coming from IoT, from big data, from social networks. I've read a study recently dated of May, so pretty fresh. We produce 46 zettabytes of data this year. And in 5 years from now, we will have tripled this number. We have now data in ERP systems, in BI tools, in big data distributions on the cloud, in relational databases, in Excel spreadsheets, in business glossaries, existing data dictionaries, everywhere. So the biggest challenge is to understand and contextualize your data sets, their characteristics, the context they can be used and are created. So that's the first challenge and the first reason for why you should manage your metadata. The second reason for managing metadata is to give a meaning to this data. You need to relate them to business concepts. You need to link them together to better leverage your data assets through your reading of your metadata. Third point is documentations. We see a lot of documentations around metadata in companies. So they can be in different formats. They can have different levels of completeness. You can have different angles to look at them. You can have different locations of those data sets. So this is why we think with a data catalog, you can handle that. This approach with a data catalog will help you to strengthen and unify the way you look at data and have a consolidated view on data on a shared repository to better understand the data by the biggest number of users. Another reason for managing your metadata is to become faster. We see a lot of companies that are being slowed down by the fact that people are spending too much time in researching their data and helping them to quicker discover the entire data that you have in your company will not only help you to be faster in your inside projects, but also be faster in launching new business initiatives. A data catalog and managing your metadata also will help you a lot in linking data with each other and then finding synergies. If you can have a complete view on your data sets, a 360 view on your data sets, then you can link them together to innovate. Let me give you an example. One of our customers, who is a car manufacturer, they have hundreds of thousands of data sets, and their goal is to create value on their through their data catalog. And for example, when they launch a new vehicle, they want to calculate the margins for this vehicle for the next coming years. And when you look at that from a controller perspective, you need to crunch data from the dealers network, from the manufacturing and the suppliers in order to anticipate the changes and then calculate the margins for the future in your vehicles. So that's a good example of identifying data synergies within the company. Last but not least, we are now are constrained by regulations. So the GDPR in Europe and CCPA in the US. So any company has to stick with regulations, but also corporate policies around data. So managing your metadata is a way of handling those constraints. Having said that, what we see on the market is that, first of all, despite those many advantages, this discipline is still not very widespread in business. A lot of companies have not yet identified the benefits they could have from using a data catalog and managing well their metadata. They don't just realize that they can innovate with their good metadata management. We also see a lot of isolated initiatives when they exist. And because they're isolated, they don't get enough support for their development, and they don't get the right level of sponsorship, and they don't reach the critical mass to extract all the possible value around their data. So we often see metadata management triggered by limited needs. For example, a lot of companies have addressed this metadata management for regulation purposes only. So they are in a defensive mode, and their needs for dealing with metadata is only triggered by compliance issues rather than thinking about creating value. So in many cases, metadata management projects are stopped or slowed down or abandoned because they don't create value for the final users. Last but not least, and that's a reality, we often see a lot of companies still using Excel to manage their metadata. It's a good way of doing things. It's a good starting point, but we think it's not the right platform to do that, because you cannot share, you cannot enhance the documentation, and have a lot of people involved in that. So this is why we think having an appropriate ad hoc data catalog is the answer to handle that. Analysts like the Gartner Group see metadata management as a strategic issue for the next coming years. It will, in this study dated in 2018, they were predicting that they would spend twice much effort in managing metadata management in a 3 years time frame. So it's quite a strategic issue, addressing three needs: understand for better leverage, of course; master, because now we have those very strong regulations issues; and improve internally your projects, and of course create new services in order to keep up with the competition. So how can you increase your chances of being successful? First of all, I'm not happy to say that, but that's a reality. There is no miracle. There is no unique cooking recipe to address that. We don't believe in a single universal response. Each context is different. Companies' expectations are different. Priorities are different. Some are offensive, some are defensive. So you should find your own journey. And of course, culture, maturity, organization, technology, sense of urgency, offensive or defensive approach are all the parameters that will dictate the way you will have to manage your metadata. And we have to say that our platform is flexible enough to adapt to your context and not the other way around. Second point, the time frame can be completely different. Some companies, because they're highly regulated, have to deal with the complex and constrained data governance. Some of them don't have that many constraints on regulations and move quicker. So the temporality can be different from one vertical to the other. You have to act in a very agile way, and this is what we will try to demonstrate today. You need to test and learn. You need to proceed step by step. You need to collect feedback from the field, address issues and difficulties, and you will face failures before you will face successes. That's a reality. So a pragmatic way of building your metadata management approach in a test and learn and incremental way with the humility and pragmatism is we think, the way to proceed. So in this webinar and generally what we tend to say to our customers is that we have found, based on our experience, that in a 6 weeks time frame, we can guarantee you to create enough value to continue this ongoing process and improve it over time. Of course, it can appear short and challenging, but you need to start somewhere, and we guarantee that with our approach, you will enhance the reach of your data catalog and meta management approach to better serve your company. So how do we advise our customers to proceed? Is to proceed step by step, as shown in this slide. So you have to pick up one business goal, which will be addressed by one step, and you will launch your metadata management initiative around this first step. So you have to define the perimeter of this first increment. So basically the data assets you want to address. And you have also to think about the population that will be served in this first business case. So one step, one business goal, limited parameter of data sets, limited number of people for the first increment. And then when you will have victories and when you will have shown values, then you can enhance the perimeter by incrementing or augmenting the number of data assets, for example. And you can also reach more people. And then you will proceed step by step, addressing one business goal after the other. And in order to do that, and if you do that, you will be successful because you will communicate around the outcome of each and every step. So building awareness around something that is being successful is key. So basically, what's the chronology of the cycle we're suggesting? Step number one, as mentioned, you have to identify a goal that addresses an issue that is well known in your company. Sufficiently known to be under the sunlight, so it means that a lot of people will take a look at this first increment. Second step, of course, you have to connect to the data sources that will be serving this need. So with Zinnia, it's quite simple. It means that you have to deploy a scanner on your data sources or your data source or sources and connect it to it. And then you will be able to start your metadata management and feeding your data catalog. The third step is because you have a business need to serve, you will have to conceive and configure your first meta model. So a meta model is a set of properties that are designed to address a specific need. So you will have, in this step number 3, we will show that to conceive your first set of properties to serve this business issue. The 4th step, once you've done that, is to import the data and populate your data catalog and document your assets. So this will be typically done by the data stewards. Once you've done that, then you can open the service to the targeted subset of users you wanted to address on that issue, and then get their feedback. And in step number 6, you will measure the gains based on the KPIs that you have defined in step 1. And with this feedback, you can go for the next step. So this is a round circle, and each and every circle is 6 weeks. Each set of 6 weeks, you create value, you get feedback, and then you enhance the reach or on the number of assets or on the population. So let's take an example. This company A meets the following challenges. They want to set up a data lake to facilitate and carry out the projects of many teams. And in fact, they face several issues. First one is that the project teams spend too much time in identifying the right data sets. The issue number 2 is that this data lake receives many data sources, and they have only 2 managers who have a complete overview on this platform. The consequence is that people are constantly calling them to understand things about the data sets, like where they come from, who's in charge of them, what is the usage, etc., etc. And on top of that, in this company, like in anyone, you have corporate policies, and the sensitivity of the data sets have to be something that is shown to anyone. So in our example, in the first week, we have to set up the goal. So to address those issues, we want to reach the 3 following KPIs, sorry. First of all, we want to have 100% of imported data sets. For each data set, we want to have a qualified contact in order to avoid to have those guys being solicited, all the time. And we want to have, for all those data sets, an information on the level of sensitivity. So that's the goal of the first week. Of course, that's for the demo purposes. In reality, maybe the goal would be a little bit bigger. For this demo, it's pretty limited, but you can imagine that you can have for the week 1 goals a wider range of expectations, of course. So having said that, we have set up the goal: 100% of imported data sets, a qualified contact, and information about sensitivity. What do we have to do now? So as we have seen in the cycle, the first thing we have to do is to get access to the data sets. So I will switch to the Zinnia platform. I will then, I have already my connectors deployed on my prems to connect to all my data sources virtually. So we will define a connection towards one of the platforms. So I'll switch to my demo. So that's the dashboard of Zinnia. So of course, it's completely empty. So the screen doesn't show you that much, but you could see, if you would have done some work already, the completion bar, suggestions for your fields, the catalog status. I forgot to mention that we at Zinnia believe in a reality-proof connected data catalog. It means that our connectors constantly look at your data sources and display catalog status against the data sources. So if there's any change in the data sources, the data stewards would be warned for those changes. So first of all, what do I have to do? I have to define a connection to a data source. So this is what I'm going to do by clicking on settings. So I have already a connection made, but I will create a new one. So this connection, I have a list of connectors deployed on my platform. I will take an S3 distribution. I will call this data source data lake platform. And then I will provide credentials that I don't know by heart. So I'll copy and paste them for the demo. Oh, sorry about that. So I put the access key, then I will paste password. Oops, sorry again. Yeah, here I am. So I have defined a new connection on an S3 distribution. For the time being, it doesn't display that there are data sets in that platform. But in fact, in Xenia, you can schedule inventories on the frequency you want. If I refresh my screen, I guess I will have, now I have 15 data sets available, not yet in my catalog, but I know that I can potentially work with those 15 data sets. Back to the slides. Sorry. So I have done my job in step number, in the week number 2, I needed to build a connection to my data sources. In week number 3, I will have to work on the Metamodel itself. So you will have in Xenia to find the appropriate support for the expected concepts you want to meet in your business goal. So defining a Metamodel is in fact defining and qualifying properties that can serve a business need to better monitor them, right? So what do I have to do here? I have to design something which is related to the level of sensitivity of data as specified in my week 1 KPIs. So back to the demo, back to Xenia. I will create a property related to the sensitivity of the data. So I will create this new property. I will call it level of sensitivity. I would put a document, a description on it. This is the level of sensitivity of my data. Sensitivity. The level of sensitivity. I want to constrain the data stewards in the way they tag this property. So it means that I will give them only a limited number of possible values. Then they cannot do whatever they want. They need to choose in a limited number of values for this property level of sensitivity. So I would put it sensitive as the possible value. I will put known. I will put secret. And I will put top secret. Okay. Now, what I have to do is to attach this property to a category item of my data catalog. So remember, I want to attach that to the dataset. So I will go to the datasets and create a new category, a new section in my dataset, sorry. So I will call it sensitivity. And I will drag and drop my property in this section. What it means is that now my datasets have a new property in a new section called level of sensitivity. Oh, I forgot to mention that I didn't do it, but I could have flagged several things to, for example, make this property a search criteria and fully indexed or shown in search. So I forgot to do that for the demo. So back to my slides. I have done, I have built a very basic Metamodel, which is defining the level of sensitivity, and I have attached this property to the dataset. So the data stewards, they now need to document this property. Of course, in the real world, you would have to define a wider Metamodel. This is for the demo purposes. Week number 4, what I need to do now, your catalog is ready to receive the assets. So I need now, as a data scientist, to do my job, which is what? Import the data in the data catalog, do my curation work. So that's what I'm going to do now. I will reconnect to Zinea as a data steward. So I log out. So I have a profile called about the same name, but now I'm a data steward. So now I'm not a super admin anymore. So in fact, I don't have the settings here because I cannot do anything about settings. But as a data steward, I'm in charge of importing data. So see, this is what I'm going to do. I will import data from the data lake platform. I will select the data sets I want to deal with. So I will add them all, for example. So the connectors has connected to S3, has gathered all the metadata information and is suggesting them to the data steward. Next step, good news, in Zinea you can define contacts for your data sets. So by default, I will assume that the data sets in the data lake platform are handled by Mary Doe, and Mary is a project manager. And I will have to, of course, put that somewhere. So I created a category before the demo. So I will import all my data in the category called all purposes. So about to launch my import of data. So I will import 11 items from the data lake platform. I will put them in the category called all purposes. And by default, I will assign Mary Doe, as a contact because she's a project manager. So I have done that. So I have my 11 data sets. Here they are. And I will work on the level of sensitivity. So if I click on baby names, for example, it sounds like sensitive information. I will say it's sensitive. So baby names are sensitive now. If I go back to my catalog, the other data sets here. So I have 11. The others are not yet populated for this property. So I can do bulk edits and change the level of sensitivity of the other data sets, and then change the property for all those data sets. So the level of sensitivity for the other ones will be known. So I have assigned one level of sensitivity to baby names, which is sensitive. And for the rest of the 10 data sets, they're not sensitive. If I browse through my catalog, so I have 11 data sets, out of which I have fields and one category. So if I browse, for example, if I go back to baby names, I can see that Mary Doe has been the by default contact for this data set. I can have information about the schema. So basically, here the fields are the columns of the tables. Of course, my connector has imported a lot of information already on the type of data, etc., etc. If I would have done something about lineage, I would find it here. So back to my deck of slides, imported the data, and now the only thing you have to do is to open the service to the people who want to use this first set of data sets. So during this week number 5, you're data scientists. So I'll get back to, as a data scientist, I will log out and log in as a data scientist, sorry. And then this is where they will be able to find information, search through the data. So we have quite a clever search engine that can index a lot, and with natural language processing and operators to look at, to browse through the catalog. So week number 6, we have done the circle. We had a business issue, which was people were wasting too much time in finding data. They were soliciting too much, a couple of people who could not handle that. And we had to stick to some corporate policies around the sensitivity of data. We connected, so we have populated a first subset of data sets to feed from a data lake to feed our data catalog. We have defined a Metamodel, which is very simple and basic, of course, for the demo. But we have defined a level of sensitivity property. We have attached contact names, so people, the data scientists who want to have information about a particular data set, they can contact Mary Doe. I didn't show you, but they could have even used our chatting tool to do that. And then we open the service to data scientists, and it would be now time for us to collect their feedback. Were they happy with the Metamodel I produced for them? Could they find more easily the data sets? Were they warned when the data sensitivity was high? All these type of things. So you iterate like that. And you get feedback from them, and now it will be time for you for the next iteration to maybe adapt the perimeter, make it bigger or smaller, maybe enhance your Metamodel or open the service to more business users. And last but not least, this is very important, communicate around it. You need to celebrate victories and make people aware of the fact that you have created value for the company in this particular iteration. And then if you do that, you will onboard more motivated people who will want to have access to data catalog for new business needs. So it was a quick webinar, but we wanted to show you how we proceed with our customers to help them create value, and at the same time sticking to some regulations or corporate policies. But we think it's the right way of handling metadata management. You can have more information by downloading our white paper on this, the effective guide to start metadata management. Of course, we are happy to answer you if you contact us at info@zinea.com.